Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you today. How's the audio coming across right now?
Not bad, a little bit garbly, but better than yesterday.
Okay. Could be that I might need to speak and then break and then whatever, but we will play with it some more and
It's sounding good now.
right. Okay, we're good then. Let me hit up with the top. I gotta hit this one right away. Chris K. Top of the morning to you, team.
Chance Bros, please stay out of the comments today.
I will stay out of the comments today to a degree. But so let's hit this real quick so we don't waste any more time. June is Men's Mental Health Month. We are talking about different facets of men's mental health throughout the month, as we have been, and we will continue today and, well, tomorrow. But and then we're going to be getting into some more depth of topics. Also, none of us are doctors, so anything that we do say, anything that we do come across with is our own personal experience and anecdotal information from others that we have been around. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment box. You already saw me toss up Chris's comment there. We do read them all. We do go through them. So by all means, hit us up. It'll be good times. Add to the conversation. And Celtic Mick, first time on the show. Very exciting. Glenn, we've had you before, but it's always nice to see you, brother. And so, Mick, you want to give us a little blurb on who you are, where you come from, all those little things?
Sure. I'll be glad to. So, I was in 2 Commando when I joined really young age. I was 17 when I went to the recruiting office, and when I was 18, I was in the Army, and I did my basic training. I was sitting there with 150 men, and I was the youngest person in the room. Then I decided I was really good friends with Tim Turner. You guys all know Tim, Gunny. We were always around, and then he got me into the airborne kick, and I said, yeah, I want to do that. So I was lucky. I got right onto the course. I was up in, I think it was in Calgary for about 4 months, and I had my jump course. And then that following summer, myself, Tim, and a couple of others went to Petawawa, and that's where I ended my career. I spent the rest of my time there. The thing I took about it, because obviously, it's Men's Mental Health Week, I really loved the camaraderie because I was young when I joined. So that was the first thing I realized, like how close the people are. Like even when we went off to Cyprus for 6 months, and on the way back, we did a stint in Edmonton for a couple weeks, just helping the pilots drop soldiers. So there was a few of us hanging around. It was a good time in Edmonton. Spent a lot of my money that I saved that I was in Cyprus. And we got back into Petawawa the first night. And what I noticed is a lot of the married guys who were with us, so we were gone like a good, 7 months or so. And they all were out in the town running it up and having a good time, heading to Pembroke and all that, even though they've been away from their home. And, the bond was really close. So when I got out of the Army, I found it really tough trying to get back into the swing of things of being a civilian. Because I always had, people around me from like a young age. So I really used that as a crutch. I found the first person I met and I got married right away. So I had 4 kids. I got a job and I did the job. I was never really, really happy. And, I had a lot of like mental problems, but I never talked to anyone. I was never comfortable. The marriage broke down eventually, and I met someone else right away. And then that wasn't working. I was a really bad place. I was coming up to like 40 years old, and I was in a dark place. And luckily, I had an Irish passport. I applied for it a few months previous because my mother's from Belfast. So I was able to have an Irish passport. And I said, you know what? I have to change something. So I packed 2 bags, jumped into a plane, and I landed into Dublin. I didn't have any plans, and people think I tell the story a lot here, and people think I was mad, which I was. But, I got off the plane and I just looked for the coach park, which is like a bus stop, and I saw a bus that said Wexford on it. I said, I'll give it a shot. So I landed into Wexford, went to the Citizens of Vice Bureau, found a place, and I had to get all these paperwork and stuff. But people were just so friendly. not that Canadians aren't friendly, but it's a different kind of openness. Like people, if you walk and make eye contact in the streets in like Wexford and that, they'll say hi. And now you get to know them. Like if I walk to the shop and that, you're going to meet people and they're going to talk to you. But getting away from that story a bit, I in a dark space. I had about 2,400 euros at the time to get me started. And it was really hard to work because I landed on February 8th, 2008 in Wexford. And 3 weeks later, the country's locked down. You know, we had the banks were all closed up. We had the worst economic crisis since the Depression. So it was hard to get a job. I had a decent job when I was in Canada. I was a manager at a transport company, UPS, and I was making good money. But people wouldn't realize that I just wanted to get a minimum wage, just get something to get a place to stay. But that was part of the journey because then I had always had people that I had to have insulate around me to be comfortable, which is what I thought. But then the next 3 years, I spent totally on my own. I had a little job, which was just working in a taxi base in the local town, which turned out to be a good thing because I got to meet about 20,000 people. So I got to meet other people. And then for the first time in my life, I was able to be happy with my own skin, living by myself in apartments or flats or stuff like that. And then eventually I started to talk to people and get out of my skin, and I started to feel happier with myself. Eventually I met my partner who I am now. We've been together for 11 years now. Everything's great. I changed jobs. I got a couple of degrees through an insurance company here. I'm presently the president of the local Lions Club until the 7th of July, which I handed over. And it's just I changed it around, but it started with happening to be able to be happy with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, I don't think I was. And I think it goes back to like, trying to replace the camaraderie. Like I know you guys are all, some of you guys are different. Tim's different. He was a career, he got out and then he went into the police force and all that stuff. And, sometimes I wish I would have stayed in there, but everyone has their own journey and he makes decisions. But that's fine. And I was really blessed because I had a private health insurance and did screenings and they came up just before the pandemic, in October before the pandemic hit. Blood tests came in. My PSA was a little bit high. So the doctor said, come back in 6 weeks and we'll take another PSA. So I had no symptoms of anything. And it jumped up again. They said, okay, we're going to have to send you to do an MRI. And so I went the next week to Waterford. They did the MRI. Oh, didn't like that. Then they sent me to a specialist and he did a biopsy. And then within a few months, like from October to February, I had my prostate removed because I had full-blown cancer. But I was lucky because I had private health insurance. If I was on the public system, during the pandemic, they cut all surgeries. And because of the fast increasing of the blood count and the spreading of the cancer, I could have been riddled if I had to wait 2 years. Mm-hmm. So they removed it now. There's a lot of side effects. There's a lot of mental issues you have to go through because, having your prostate removed is not a great thing for men. It's a good thing for your life because it prolongs your life. I'm only 56 now. So at the time I was 54. But it opened up the window because while I was getting ready for my operation, I started walking a bit, and then I saw the movie The Way. And I said, you know what, I might do the old Camino. It'd be something to do. So I started walking. I never really liked walking, I thought, and to get in shape. And I said, oh, you know what, I really like this. So then I started studying Spanish, and I made that a quest. Once I get over this cancer thing, I'm going to do the Camino. And I put that in my head and I said, okay, I did the Camino. And during that, I started seeing these YouTube and that, and people were going to the Himalayas. And I said, geez, that would be something. But I think you only live once. You have to do stuff. You have to do stuff. You don't just wait and put things off. If you can do it, do it. So I just said, you know what? Next goal is I'm gonna try to go to the Himalayas. And in the meantime, I said, you know what? I'm not going to work because the age of retirement in Ireland is 67 years old. And I said, there's no way I'm going to wait till I'm 67 to retire because I like to walk, I like to explore, I like to hike. I climbed Ben Nevis last year as well, which is the highest mountain in the British Isles. So I said, I like to challenge myself. Plus, I could be on my own because when I was in Camino, I was on there for like 18 days by myself. Before that,
Mick, Mick, if I can just interject.
I was just about to.
Because we've only got an hour. And Chance usually says, can you just give us a 30-second introduction? But I suppose he overlooked that.
Yeah, I was letting it run for a bit.
So before we jump into what we're going to talk, it's okay. It's great. But viewers do expect a certain rhythm here, so we'll try to get back to it. We're going to talk about the call to adventure.
Yes.
And before we jump into that, I do have to clarify, when you went over to Cyprus, was that the 86-87 tour?
Yes.
Okay. How long were you in the commando? What years did you serve?
85 to 89, I think it was.
Okay, I was there 86 to 89, so no doubt we were on the same tour in Cyprus. Yeah. I hope I didn't punch you out or yell at you, or did we get really drunk? Because it could have been one of those three things.
Or all of
them. We all thought you were like Tom Cruise.
Oh, there you go.
Well, in my head, I thought I was, and I didn't even know who Tom Cruise was. So, Mick, thanks for the intro. And what you just described to some degree was your own personal call to adventure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can build off of that, Chance. Which direction do you want to take this?
Well, I was actually hoping for a natural conclusion of the story. It just kind of kept going. But
which direction?
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to talk about the call to adventure, and the reason why I actually had Glenn and Mick on here together with you, Shaun, was the fact that I think the call to adventure gets ignored quite often, especially as young men. We find a job and you find a girl and you start to settle down, right? And the call to adventure is always kind of in the background there. And I know for myself growing up, there was this little thing in the back of my head that said, like, I want to be in the army. I want to be in the army. I'm going to be in the army. But once I achieved that, I didn't really know where to go from there. So the reason I wanted to have you all on here is because you all at different stages of your life have hit that call to adventure and taken it. Some haven't, some have. So, but I want to hear your guys' initial thoughts on that first call, that first when you realize, like, I need to do something totally different. I'm going to go that way instead of the way everybody else went. So I'm actually going to start with Glenn. Because, I mean, Mick, we got, I think we got your story there, but Glenn, your call to adventure came later in life, right? Or did you have one earlier?
You know what? I've had a few, actually. Yeah. I think, how do I say this? I just saw the title on my way home from jiu-jitsu this morning, and I thought it was a great topic because, I was like, oh, adventure. It's like, okay, let's big mountains climbing and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, you know what? That's one perspective of adventure. And for me, my adventure was also seeking knowledge at the same time. It didn't have to be going to do crazy stuff, crazy trips or whatever. For me, it was like that was part of it for sure, but it's also chasing different aspects of knowledge and challenging myself. So in my first career, I was doing strength conditioning, which was great. And I was working for some, the Olympic team for Canada and the US and aspects of Australia. And I saw, there's a lot of success there with some wins and all kind of stuff. And, after 5 years, okay, all these boxes were ticked, and I was like, okay, like what's next? So in interest of, I've always been in loved the martial arts. So I was like, okay, strength and conditioning was very kind of linear at the time. We were mostly focusing on the body, but not so much the mind. So that in turn brought me to going to acupuncture and getting a degree in acupuncture and studying while I was working full time and getting my ticket for that. And, kind of bringing both sides together. And I noticed that, for me to be in that kind of like Western science, all kind of stuff, and incorporating the Eastern stuff, there needed to be another bridge. So then, okay, what's the next bridge? So the next bridge for me was going to doing a full 200 hours and immersing myself in yoga teacher training. So I kind of brought all steps together. Each one of those were different adventures. And man, it brought so much experience and meeting so many different people to bring me to different stages that brought me to where I am now at 39 years young, going into law enforcement. So I think all those different adventures almost kind of were catalysts for the next one and the next one. So I think adventure is all like a great big trip of going on a big hunt for like a bison or a sheep hunt, and also kind of going into knowledge of like, okay, what can I learn? Like, that for me was probably more an adventure.
Absolutely. We got comment from quickly just here. Daniel, afternoon. Dr. C says, I'll tell you, children and a family is a wild and fun adventure. Absolutely. If that's the adventure you're looking for, because if it's not, and it happens anyway, it can be. I think that's a part of it. But Shaun, you've hit multiple adventures. You talked about it in your post today in this morning, but what that first one to go and be in the Army, was that something from a very young age, or was it just like an option to get out?
Yeah, it was the least adventurous of all, believe it or not, in the sense of from about the age of 5, my mom tells me, like when we were living over in England and Ireland, that I always was saying that I just want to be in the Army. And I was fascinated with soldiers, and I was fascinated with that whole lifestyle, that adventurous path that I didn't understand at all. Of course, my military career turned into quite a large adventure, but it wasn't an adventurous move for me because it felt right. It felt natural. It felt like that's what I was supposed to be. But the real adventures are, to me anyway, are, as I tried to indicate in my post this morning, before I hopped into my live chat, is doing things that just I don't want to do, or doing things that I feel like are impossible to do, or doing things that I feel like an imposter and there's no way I should be doing it. The photo that I chose as I was trying to discuss the art of pursuing adventure, or the way of adventure, or learning things through adventure. As I've said many a time, just adventure will teach you a lot about yourself. But as I was trying to formulate how best to describe that, of course, every day with my Microsoft OneDrive, I'm reminded of what I was doing 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 14 years ago, etc. And I've done a few things, and a lot of them look like adventurous things. But if the adventure that you're in is day after day after day of doing rad riding or rad parachuting or rad whatever, if that's your MO, if that's normal, it's not that adventurous. From the outside, it looks like that's a wild lifestyle. But if you're in it on the daily, it's just the norm. Externally, as people observe it, they see that it's wild. But for me, it's just my day. Now, where it becomes adventurous to me is when I'm heading in this direction, and then I head in that direction. So I listed out some things in that first paragraph in my post this morning, which I've never type before in a single paragraph. It made me uncomfortable typing out my adventurous life because I don't like to brag about it. I don't actually like to put it out there so much that it's in someone's face. Then there's some goof out there who thinks that I'm like shooting off the fireworks about my life. I'm not. It took me a freaking long time to write that this morning. I was really annoyed with myself that I was going to have to put that out to kind of just like quote unquote own it, in order to make the point that if you follow my career trajectories, they've been going that way, then they've gone 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 that way. I've gone in all the directions in respect to, now I'm going to reinvent myself. So that reinvention, a total different direction, to me, that's adventure. And that's why the photo that I chose to assign to that post this morning was me standing in front of a microphone with my coffee mug, about to face the eye of Sauron yet again. And I don't want to do this, but it's the adventurous part of it. It's something that I'm not good at. It's something that I don't want to do. It's all of the challenging things that all come together in this one little microphone that I feel is so challenging that it engages me, even though I don't want to engage in it. And so most people wouldn't think that this podcasting thing, that little photo of me standing there, is a big deal, but it's a mega adventure for me. Like they'd if I would have put a photo of me fast roping or whatever, doing something that some people might know me for, if I would have put that photo up, it wouldn't have had the same impact to be able to say this, that climbing Everest isn't an adventure if you climb mountains a lot. But if you've never talked into a microphone before, it's a freaking adventure. So you don't have to bleed and sweat and duck and dive and levitate. You don't have to do crazy things for it to be an adventure. An adventure is this, in my opinion, something that is a wild departure from your standard issue trajectory that you would feel comfortable engaging in.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, you and I were talking very early on in the collective, in the idea that those that were to, like, if you were a hard charger in the military, I mean, we see this all the time, right? You get the special forces guys that get out of the military and start a consulting company teaching people how to do special forces stuff to other special forces people, and you're not really changing anything. You're
the same person your entire life.
Yeah, exactly. And it may seem adventurous. You're absolutely right. I like that concept. It may seem adventurous to someone who has never adventured in that realm. But if you're in that realm, I mean, you look at, you made a comment about Lord of the Rings, or The Hobbit, I should say.
The Hobbit,
yeah. In terms of Bilbo having to go on this quest. But it wasn't really a quest until he left the Shire, right? That whole trip through the Shire, it's actually, a good portion of the book.
You eat apples, you nod at your neighbors, everyone's waving. Hey, have a good walk today. I'll see you later this afternoon.
Exactly. And then you don't come back. That's when you cross, there's a line that you cross that you're like, now I'm in uncharted territory. They actually made a comment of that in Lord of the Rings.
They did. They're walking across a field, I believe.
Yeah, and Sam goes, "This is the farthest I've ever been from home."
That's right.
And then they keep going. And I think that is it's a key component in the call to adventure, that there has to be a point where you go, I'm in uncharted territory.
Yeah. A new footprint, a branch spanking new footprint.
Yeah. So my question then to y'all is, what did that feel like when you took that first step across that line? Because I know, again, I see this a lot from some of the responses and the stuff that I've done in advocacy, is that people leave the military and then 10, 15 years, like, oh, I should never have left, or, oh, I wish I had done, or, oh, there's those regrets that start to pile in. But that initial call to adventure was there, right? I wanted to get out. I wanted to get married. I wanted to do these things. I wanted to But what did it feel like to take that step, Mick?
Yeah, like you explained it exactly. Like wanted to be in the Army. I wanted to go somewhere, get my wings. I did that relatively quick, and then I decided, okay, I wanted to get married. So I got married right away. But I was just chasing something. I don't know if I really wanted to. I just wanted that enclosure. So I wasn't really satisfied when I did do that change. Then I completely changed jobs, then I eventually geography changed it, and I went over to Ireland. And I've changed so many times. Like I went to the insurance industry, something I never would have thought of. But then I gained confidence in myself, and I was sort of proud of myself. And going back to Shaun, like the stuff that you did, like kudos. Like, I wouldn't be ashamed of, saying what you did. Like, really impressed with all your things that you've accomplished, and you should be proud of that too. And like yourself, when I went through the cancer thing and I decided to do these walks and that, then I started, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, and everyone thought I was nuts because it's something that I wouldn't do. I was very quiet at work. I did my job really well, and it's now getting used to having to walking around the streets with the camera in your hand, walking around talking to yourself. And I made the mistake of bringing my partner up to Belfast once, and I took out the camera in the bus, and she says, "What the heck are you doing?" He says, "You're not doing that." So hence, she's not on any of the vlogs anymore. But she lets me do the thing. So, I think life is there to challenge yourself, like do things different. Like Shaun said, don't be satisfied with the status quo. And if you find yourself in a rut, then chances are you are in a rut. And it's okay to deviate a bit, like I feel I feel you only go around once. You may as well enjoy as much as you can. So my goal is to grow the channel, see the world. Like next year, I'm planning to go to either Iran or Pakistan. That's my goal. Always set a goal, do something different. Yeah.
Well, Pakistan is fun and the street food is cheap, so
there you go.
I'd recommend. I'd like to say this because Mick, you raised a point that I think is quite important. And so you'd stated that when you were young, you didn't have much of an idea of what to do next. So, you joined, you hung out with Tim, you both got really good haircuts, and next thing you knew, you were jumping out of planes, and that's rad. But there was no like master plan that you were following. Like myself, I had no master plan. My master plan was just to kick that ass that day. Beyond that, I figured the next day would show up, And so I didn't have a grand life plan. To me, my life trajectory was just simply me doing my best and being open-minded to the possibilities of what showed up from the sidelines, and then not being scared to engage in what seems like a bonkers challenge. But I have the advantage that maybe some other men don't have, and that's I believe in myself because I was taught to believe in myself. I was created to be able to do whatever I want to do based on, the military career that I was engaged in. It reinforced that I can do anything and not be scared about it. That doesn't make me feel comfortable. I'm not comfortable podcasting. I'm not comfortable shifting careers and all of that good stuff. But the military taught me that I can, if it's important enough, that I can pivot on a dime and go in a completely different direction. So now to you, Mick, you didn't have the plan, but through life, you just kind of bumbled your way forward and learned a boatload of lessons. And now you're in a great place that you have a lot more through all of the failures, just like myself. We get clarity. And through that clarity, we refine our trajectory. And then eventually, maybe as we're older, because we're about the same age, I find myself at a point now where the ride was worth it because I understand the ride now. But when I was young, I didn't understand the ride. So to my point, you and I, we didn't think things through too deeply. We just did. But if you've got the opportunity to be able to think things through deeply as a younger man, you should. And I wish someone would have told me that because no one ever did. So what I had to do was figure things out through a boatload of mistakes, which is fine. And it got me to this point, which is fine. But there's two ways to do it. You learn through the school of hard knocks without thinking, or you think and you learn through hard knocks and you maybe get a little further down the road, as it were.
It gives you that plan, right? That direction to at least move forward in rather than just bumping around. I use this analogy in Glenn, I'm going to come to you in a second here. I use this analogy in terms of dealing with post-traumatic stress or any type of trauma or any type of work, is that it's like walking down a path in, a well-traveled path, and the banks are kind of rounded. And if you're to try to leave that path, it takes extra work because there are boundaries there are borders there's a little lip there that you got to get over, which can pull people back to the middle and just pull you back to the path and go, oh, that's really hard. Oh, that's too hard. Oh, that's just impossible. But
well,
it's not.
It can. It can, but there's no way it ever has to.
That's what I was going with.
Assuming that someone understands the word adventure.
Yeah.
And we haven't defined adventure yet. So
Not
let
yet.
me hear your definition, pal.
So my definition of adventure is to forge new pathways. That's at the very root of it in my mind. It is to forge new pathways. If you're going to be going in areas that you have never been and there are no paths for you to take. So even with, let's use my path analogy. If you look at a path and it branches off into 5 different ways, each one of those is a different adventure, but the true adventure is to kind of turn left and start bashing through the woods, if you know what I mean. You're going to be stepping right off the path.
Before you get to that 5-point area, you just described yourself walking down a single path, maybe bumping up against the edges.
Mm-hmm.
So how long do you stay on that path? Because that path is going to go on forever with tiny little bumps and bruises along the way in a straight, predictable path that doesn't scare you. So let's talk about that for a sec.
Absolutely. My initial... It's kind of funny you brought that up because I was actually going to go there. You've been reading my mind lately, and I'm not really liking it.
Actually, I actually have.
But that path is, it's only been, you only start to see the 5 path, the breaks in the pathway once you start realizing that there are breaks in the pathway. And I find that basically when you're young, you're just watching your feet. You're staring down at the ground, looking at your feet. So you have no depth perception of what's actually happening. So that's where my definition is that you can continue to stare at your feet and you can walk along that path. You'll never see any other branching points, but there are thousands of branching points that you have just missed because you're staring at the ground. And as to your point, Shaun, when you're saying that you need to, or not need to, but as a young man, if you could take the time to create a plan, that's you lifting your view and seeing all those branching points and going, oh, I can go this way. Oh, I can go that way too. Ooh. And then you can start making your plan working that way, which will give you more bumps and bruises. Or you can decide that the forest looks pretty cool and start diving through that too. I just think it's the perception. And again, one of the reasons I wanted to ask these questions and get into this conversation is the fact that it really just comes down to your conception of needing something different or wanting something different and then going after it. The action's right there.
Okay, so with that said, I agree to some degree. However, my definition and your definition of adventure are quite different.
Did I get like a 70% on that or 60%?
You got 100%.
Oh, okay.
You for
me.
Like, I mean, they were your words in your brain that you spoke. So that's your 100% definition of adventure, right? As you just defined it.
Correct. Yep.
Right. So now mine is different. I'll give you my 100% definition, which is see the horizon. The adventure is beyond that. I don't care about my feet. I don't care about the little goofy junction that shows up in 5 minutes. I don't care about the forest off on the horizon. I care about what's out of sight. To me, that's adventure. I look at the horizon and think, I wonder if anyone's ever gone beyond the horizon. I wonder if there is another human who can ... To me, that's adventure. And so I'm stating that, not to draw the comparison between Chance and I'm stating it to be clear that adventure is as limiting as our minds make it. If you think adventure is waking up and finding your socks in the morning, bam, that's adventure.
Yeah,
but there's people out there that will categorize adventure as, wow, I found my socks. Fantastic. I wonder if I'll find them again next year. You adventured twice.
I found my fancy socks today.
You did. Congratulations. You'll feel special.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the as you're speaking about perception, that is you can choose to self-limit your perception by categorizing adventure as, I just wonder if I wonder what's across the street. And if you've never been out of your door, like the little hobbit, then looking out your door and then poking your head back in and going for your second breakfast, well, maybe that is your idea of adventure. But as a hobbit, I would have been stepping out of a door, looking across the Shire, looking across the horizon and thinking, what's all that smoke? coming up from down south. I wonder what that's all about. I'm going to go sort that out. I wonder if I need to put out a fire. And of course, there's orcs and trolls, and they're the problem. And so, my adventures, of course, because they are beyond we'll call it beyond the horizon. That's what creates the unknown for me. That's what creates the chaos for me. That's what creates the unpredictable force of nature that's surrounding us all the time. If I can see the problem directly in front of me, that isn't an adventure. The adventure for me is not knowing what I'm facing, heading directly towards it, and trusting that somehow I'm going to be able to face up to the challenge. So perception of adventure will drive your sense of adventure.
I like that. Glenn, what do you got? Any thoughts?
Yeah, man. I mean, all you guys put up some really great points, so I can only add on to those things. But as soon as you mentioned your own perception of it, and same thing with Mick, and then Shaun just kind of ramped it up a little bit more about self limitations, and that's where going past that's where adventure lies. Immediately, I thought about a selection process and self selection. It's like don't self select, like just that perspective change. Like, hey, this is an adventure. I'll let the selection process select me out, but I'm not going to select myself to hop out. So, to add on to what you guys have been saying, it's for me also an adventure is almost it's almost like a curiosity problem. Like, I want to see like what else is out there, what else can I see, and all the moments that have led up to that point where I make that decision of going to jiu-jitsu, playing sports, and trying different things. It's like, okay, you don't know what's on the other side of that, but you can go back to your own experiences before that. It's like, you know what? I've done all these things. I didn't know how that competition was going to shake out. So, but I'm alive. I got through it with learning a lot of stuff. So this next adventure, I don't know what's on the other side of it, still going to shake out well for me, regardless of the outcome.
I like that. I got one quick comment here I wanted to toss up. Salty Jinx has, you need to see the unknown part of the journey to feel the excitement of the challenge. And it can be a daily thing if you're in love with the journey more than the destination. I think that's a very astute point. Got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hit the nail on the head with you got to love the journey, not the destination. That is literally life, in my opinion. If you've already identified at whatever age you are that the penultimate, the peak of your existence is ... Wow, what do you do after that? There should be no limits. There should be no destination. There should only be a journey, and that journey weaves and wends and ebbs and flows its way down a non-linear path. Just like Mick, when he's out for a walk, he doesn't know what's around the corner. He doesn't care. He's going to walk around the corner and he'll see what's in front of him and keep on walking and keep on exploring and keep on discovering. And that's what life is supposed to be, I believe, is walking on a path without concern as to which direction it goes or what elevation it achieves. Just engage in the path. And the destination, though you may think you've achieved it or you may have reached it, you just pass through it to the next destination that you never reach because you're always passing through it.
Great thought. Mick or Glenn?
Yeah. I like to always do stuff now. Like, ever since I been in Ireland, and I tried to do stuff that I had never done before to see what the outcome is. 2 weeks ago, I joined the couch surfing thing. So I had a young lad from Germany come stay with us in the middle of the week overnight. Everyone at work thought it was nuts. Like, you're letting this young stranger in. I said, And then next month, I'm going to Edinburgh for a weekend, couch surfing, staying with a totally random person.
That's
I've
fantastic.
Never met before. And these are things I normally wouldn't do. I've hitchhiked in the last 6 months to Waterford, and everyone said, no one's going to pick you up. You look at you. And I said, someone will. And sure enough, I got collected, and, just do stuff that's outside of your norm. And that's an adventure to me. So when I'm going to a different country, that's going to be an adventure. I'm going to meet people that I never would have met if I just stayed at home. And that it's the engagement with these different people, the different cultures. I'm learning Nepali right now, so I can hopefully engage with the people. So everywhere I go, I want to try to learn the language, and that's learning a language is an adventure yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
absolutely. Glenn, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, no, you know what? That was a great comment, and you know, I was kind of thinking because the four of us here kind of, I guess let's just say for this sake of conversation, we kind of have the adventure mindset as well. I was that comment made me think, okay, what can go on in someone's mind in terms of them not thinking about the journey as the positive? You know, like I guess is there that, you know, the journey is not linear; it's kind of oscillating through and through. I wonder if a paralyzing factor for someone to not start that journey is probably comparison to other people's journeys. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's kind of accurate. Shaun or Mick? Shaun or Mick?
Mick.
What do you think?
Yeah, like I said, everyone has their own idea of adventure. What is an adventure to me might not be an adventure to somebody I work with. Might not be adventure to Glenn, but everyone has to find what's adventurous to themselves and see what they can get out of it. Because every time you go out of your comfort zone, I think you grow, and it makes you a better person. Whether it's in a positive, if it's a positive situation or a negative, you're going to learn from that. Like if we would have had that young lad come in and he robbed our house or something, that would be an adventure. Doesn't mean I'm not going to stop doing that. You know what I mean? Like just
yeah, it would have been an adventure for him, is what I'm thinking.
It's very true. Shaun, you got any thoughts on it?
I do. It was something that Mick said that's going to make me make this comment. And it's actually quite an important comment that I hadn't considered before. So thank you, Mick, and it'll make sense in a sec. So you'd stated that, you know, you're hitchhiking in Ireland, and immediately what came to mind, and it's because I've been to Ireland a boatload of times, you know, it's not too uncommon, even on a major road, certainly not on the quad or dual carriageways or anything like that, but on a semi-major road, certainly going through town centers and definitely on the rural roads, it is quite common to see a big old tractor just driving down the road. Sometimes it's got, you know, mud all over it and whatever, and it's a farmer who looks like he doesn't even know how to drive sometimes. I mean, like, it's pretty rural in parts of Ireland, and you can get stuck behind a tractor for a good long time. And it's just a way of life, man. It's just everyone accepts it. So here's what I was thinking as you're talking about hitchhiking. It wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility that if you stuck your thumb out, that a tractor farmer would pull over and say, jump up in the cab. And you could have been riding down the street at, you know, 30 kilometers per hour or 20 kilometers per hour on a long trip, going slowly nowhere almost. You could have been in that cab for a while. And that's an adventure. But it's only an adventure if other people understand that it's an adventure. And so, to my point, while we're out there doing all of the adventurous things that we've done in our life, I feel it's our responsibility. And it's a fine line between being bragging about the things that you adventure in life and encouraging others to adventure in life. It's a fine line, and sometimes I've done it right, sometimes I've done it wrong. But my point is this: if you were in that tractor, you could have been on a video and just talking to the farmer, or taking a photo with the farm and saying, that was the wildest adventure I've had this month. With the right state of mind and the right conversation and the right setting, that tractor ride is a massive adventure. It's just that we don't talk about it because it seems maybe mundane to some people. But when's the last time someone drove down a main road in a tractor with a stranger? Not too often. So in a way, the adventure doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be one leg hopping up Mount Everest. It can be a simple tractor ride. But the important part is not just experiencing it yourself, but encouraging others to experience these unique moments in life that just don't come around every day. engage, see how it feels. If it's fun, expose it to others as an opportunity just to take a chance in a bit of a different vector that might lead to a new friend, a new hobby, driving tractors. Who knows? But adventures don't have to be grand, and adventures should be shared with others in order to encourage others to engage in these kind of small and big adventures.
I like that. And I think it also, you said it earlier, Glenn, was that it kind of requires a curious mindset. But I was thinking that it starts with questions, just in general. Even your description there, Shaun, of I wonder what's over that horizon. There's a question there. And now you want an answer. Well, I'm going to go find out. Right? You're not just going to look at that dude and say, hey, man, what's over that horizon? I don't know. Okay, cool. But it's that question that needs to be answered. It's that desire, that drive to say, I wonder, what is this? And, I was talking a little while ago about when I was down at Branding, sitting at the table with all the old ranchers and all the just talking ranch stuff. I started asking questions. That's how it started, to the point that I got comfortable at that table. And then I was a part of that table. And I think that that's where it comes to your point, Glenn, or to your question earlier. I really do believe that what holds people back from taking the adventure is the trust in themselves, as to Shaun's point earlier, right? In the fact that whether or not they'd be capable of it. And
but there's a step before that, and you've already stated it, and it's having the curiosity to wonder if you've got the parts to even be curious to see what's on the other side of the horizon. I mean, you got to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's quite a few, given that it's Men's Mental Health Month this June, and of course PTSD Awareness Day has just slid by. If you combine PTSD with some mental health struggles, there's guys that don't even want to know what's on the other side of their front door right now, because they haven't got the curiosity to wonder if their street has changed colors in the last 3 years. Is there still a house across the street? They don't know, because they don't have the curiosity to be able to look through their front door or window to see what's going on out in the world. Never mind opening the door and stepping out into the big bad world. So you got to have curiosity in order to engage in adventure, in order to learn the lessons, in order to reinforce the fact that adventure is good, in order to then be able to ...
100%. Glenn or Mick, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like you were saying, I was watching one of your morning casts there, and you were talking about, biking and then having failures and that. And I think it's important that you embrace failures and embrace rejection. I know, as people don't want to be rejected. Normally, it's against their normal natural instincts. But I think it's important to put yourself out there and let you know that it's going to happen. Like, if you're trying to engage to a person and they just fluff you off or say you don't want to talk to you or that's fine. But there's another person. But some people are afraid to make a mistake. You have to make mistakes. You have to fail, because if you don't fail, you're not going to get better. Like you were talking about, when you started your mountain biking, you had to fail a few times to realize that you were interested in that. But I mean, a lot of people use failure as a crutch, and they don't like the feeling. So then they stop doing that. And then, that just makes you insecure. And, you have to open up the doors.
Yeah,
you do.
I think it also has to do with there's a sense of accomplishment, first off, when you're able to actually take on an adventure and carry on through the whole adventure, right? You complete the loop, you finish whatever it is you're doing. What's up?
Well, no, I'll let you continue.
Okay. So there's a feeling of accomplishment, but I think that hey, I did what it was I was supposed to do. Awesome. And then you can carry that on. But unfortunately, I see happening, especially with a lot of with young men that I've talked to, all over the internet, is they hit that sense of accomplishment, and then that's it. They just stop there. They're like, okay, cool, we're done. All right. let's walk it out, or they'll hang out in that spot. But to what you're saying earlier was the fact that if you fail and you never reach that sense of accomplishment, and you just like step away from it as like a fear reaction, that just it builds upon itself to keep you out of the adventure, if you know what I mean. Like, so every time you try something and fail, that's not going to work. You try something else and you fail, oh, that's not going to work. And it can be very demoralizing until you change your mindset. You put a little bit of intentionality into it and start realizing that you can learn about something every single time. And I was playing baseball with my boys this morning, and my youngest was getting a little frustrated that he couldn't quite hit the ball with the bat, until I showed him how close he was coming with the bat to the ball. And then his entire mindset changed, because now he was getting closer. And every time he was swinging the bat, it was getting closer. And he would hit it every once in a while. And I'd be like, there you go. That's your little piece for today. That's what you learn. You got to bleed those little wins through failures into the adventure, at least in my point. You got something to say? Push back on that, Shaun?
No, not push back. Just you're kind of making the point at the back end there, in the sense of, I think that most people initially engage in wanting to win. They want to win.
Yes.
They want to hit the baseball.
That's a great point. Yeah.
They want to blah, blah, blah. But what I'm suggesting is, don't start anyone on day one to pursue the win. If you could somehow, through magic and whatever, convince that person on day one to pursue failure, to pursue losing. If you lose enough times, you'll eventually start winning. But if you pursue winning, maybe you'll never, ever win. And so the idea being that by so desperately focusing on hitting the baseball, someone will miss the entire idea that it's not about the ball. It's about you. It's not about the swing. It's about your mind. It's not about, so all of the external vectors that people focus on of perfectly hitting that baseball. On day zero, it was never about the baseball. It was only about our internal makeup and how we view the world and how we process these things to become a better person. At a young age, a young boy can't do that very well. That's why they need a mentor. That's why they need someone who has been out there and adventured so much that they can properly define adventure to a young child. And it should never be through the lens of, listen, kid, in order to be successful in life, you better hit that baseball today. That is obviously not the lesson, because that is not adventure. That is focusing on the destination, not the journey. So the point that I did want to make there was, some folks out there will consider thinking about their adventure as the actual adventure. You know, one of these days, I'm going to go out and adventure. For now, I'm going to plan my adventure. And then the planning becomes the success. I successfully planned an adventure. I think we're going to go do it next year, but I'm feeling pretty good about planning it. And so the constancy of thought versus non-action is one of the biggest issues that I see in respect to the call to adventure. Adventure requires your feet to move in front of each other. It doesn't require you to stand there and think about adventure. Adventure is literally what Mick is doing. Walking, not knowing where he might end up, and seeing what shows up. That is the complete opposite of sitting in your house and planning a walk, but never putting your shoes on.
Yeah. Now, we have a couple minutes before I want to do final thoughts on this, but a quick question on you then is, how do we get more people moving? Because there's a lot of sedentary people out in the world, not adventuring in any way, just letting their days slip away. What can we do as mentors, as leaders in the field, as people that just want to do stuff? How do we get them off the couch? How do we get them on their feet? Glenn?
Yeah, I think conversations like the ones that we're having today, and that the collective has been having since day one in January, is just sharing that, like, the first step doesn't have to be something massive or like, 1 million YouTube followers, subscribers worthy. It's everyone's got to start somewhere, and sharing all our stories of, hey, it started up with this thought, and then doing something small to immediately action that thought, I think is, probably a pretty good solid first step.
I like that. Mick?
Yeah, like, start little. Like, for myself, I was 13 years a vegan until 14 days ago, and then I'm on day 14 of the lion diet. So everyone at work thinks I'm nuts there again too, but it's doing something different and challenging. And it's very challenging just eating red meat, water, and salt. But I set myself a task. I'm going to do it for 30 days and see what that brings. So you can do little things too.
That's very true. Shaun, you got thoughts on that?
Yeah, and by little things, that's not actually a little thing, in my opinion. That's a big thing. That's a big trajectory shift from vegan to meat eater, solely meat eater. And what that shows is a growth mindset. It shows that you're open to new challenges, obviously, and you're not afraid to fail. I mean, you could be 13 days into this thing and think, oh, forget about it. It's not for me. So the 30 days is not carved in stone in the sense of, I'm on day 12, I'm going to be in hospital, but I'm going to stick to meat. And so it's having a certain sense of drive towards the challenge that you don't properly understand yet, having the ability to commit with faith that you're going to learn something through the process. And by the way, be able to have that conversation with others at a later date to help either impart some casual wisdom or some opinion or mentorship in respect to nutritional approaches, etc. And I think adventure, if adventure was just about looking out beyond the horizon and thinking, that's just me on this solo journey again, here I go, just doing me and no one out, blah, blah, blah. It's not about that. The lessons that we learn are supposed to be passed on to the people around us. So part of the adventure is observing the adventure for others in order to be able to impart that sense of adventure into them.
I like that. I I like the concept of even mentoring as an adventure, in that if you've never done it before, if you've never tried to teach someone anything, I've heard this many times, is that you'll never learn something as well as when you have to teach it to somebody else. And I think that can even that can be an adventure. And I remember seeing the Boys and Girls Club when I was younger, or the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and those kinds of organizations that just try to get kids attached with somebody who has some world experience to mentor them through some difficult times. And that can be an adventure in of itself. Now we're a couple minutes left. Any final thoughts on the call to adventure, on adventuring as itself, or anything else we've talked about?
Yeah, man. The not the LaShawn's last comment, but the one before that about adventure and curiosity. That just made me think about all the people that you guys have had on this podcast, like Sean's two mountain bikers. I always get, I think it's
Andrew and Julie.
Andrew and Julie. Their first 24-hour race started with a question. I assume, like, I wonder if I can do this, and then look at them doing it. They're crushing it. And Satch, same thing. I wonder if I can do 22 marathons in like 22 days. Like what? Seb doing a master's in Homeland Defense and something super
global
smart.
terrorism, etc.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Julie doing, like, seeing how far she can push her body in bodybuilding. Like, all these people, and especially you guys starting, January 1st. I wonder how this podcast is going to shake out. Let's like hold my kombucha and like let's have a run with it. And I think just being kind of grateful for Shaun to bring that up, and I guess for all of us to kind of sit with it for a second, like, that's pretty darn cool, man. That's
agreed.
That's my thought.
I love it. Mick?
I just, enjoy the ride. And the luxury of, like Shaun was saying, having a YouTube channel, you get to share it with other people. So you can see my journey and learn from my mistakes and what I'm going through, and then see how I'm getting on. So I think it's a win-win.
I like it. Shaun?
Yeah, the topic of call to adventure, which we talked about, from several different angles, I feel is a conversation that lasts an entire life. The trick being that I think the catchphrase of call to adventure, it's a metaphorical statement that is supposed to represent you facing something that you don't understand, you engage in it without maybe fully believing that you can do it, et cetera, et cetera. It's a metaphorical statement. It is not a practical statement. No one's going to call you up and say, let's go adventure. There's when you get into your car, you won't hear ba-bum, ba-bum, call to adventure today. You've got to go form your own adventures. No one's going to hold your hand or call you up every day and say, let's go adventure. You have to tell yourself that. You've got to own the call to adventure. You've got to call yourself out to call for adventure. It's not a passive action. I have never just kicked back and thought, well, adventure's just going to keep showing up every day. No, I've gone and throat punched adventure and owned it as best as I can. You've got to be aggressive in your pursuit of adventure. Just don't let it happen. Go make it happen.
That's a great point. For many years, I waited for opportunities to arrive in front of me versus seeking those opportunities and attacking them. Like this one right here, Operation Pegasus Jump. Never jumped before. Tim got it started and I was like, I'm in. Let's do this. I'm coming to jump out of an airplane. Let's go. And it was an amazing adventure. Met all kinds of new people, did all kinds of new things. And it was for me. I got to grow out of it. I got to be more. I got to do more. I got to see the world in a new light from 4,500 feet jumping out of an airplane. It's a different way to look at the world. But I would never have actually been able to experience that had I not said, I'm down. Let's go. And
that and maybe a little bit of sideline abuse from your buddies.
There was some of that, yeah. Absolutely.
So we didn't touch on peer pressure in respect to adventures, but maybe that's another time.
That could absolutely be another time. I was actually going to add some peer pressure right now. I was going to go off of what you said and that there's no call to adventure, but here, guess what? Here it is. Go adventure. This is it right here. If you're listening to this, this is your call to adventure. And the best part is it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what shape you're in. It doesn't matter where you are in your head. There are adventures in all aspects of life. And as you learn what adventuring is, that means you can build upon a concept of what the call is. And then you can grow as better men, better people, better society-wide, adventuring out into the world. But the first step is always this. Take the first step. And you can do that with us here on The Collective every day. See y'all tomorrow. Chimo.